The most dangerous mistake a man can make when a woman likes him is assuming that attraction will look obvious. Sometimes it does, but sometimes the stronger the feeling becomes, the more carefully it gets hidden. She may laugh with everyone else and suddenly become quieter around you. She may seem interested one day and distant the next. She may remember something you said weeks ago, then act as if the conversation meant nothing. She may even look completely unaffected, while her attention keeps finding its way back to you. And that's where most men make the same mistake. They don't misread the signal because it is invisible. They misread it because they're waiting for certainty. But human attraction rarely arrives with a written confession. It leaks through attention, through proximity, through nervousness, through the things people notice when they wish they didn't care. And there is an uncomfortable paradox behind all of this. The person who has the most to lose by revealing their feelings may become the person who works hardest to conceal them. Why? Because attraction creates vulnerability. If she makes her interest obvious, she risks rejection. She risks looking too eager. She risks discovering that what feels powerful inside her isn't being returned. So instead of saying everything directly, she may reveal small pieces of the truth while protecting herself from the consequences. And those small pieces are what most men overlook. But before you start treating every smile, glance, or delayed text as proof of attraction, understand something important. No single behavior can tell you what another person feels. People are complicated. A woman can be friendly without being attracted. She can be nervous for reasons that have nothing to do with you. She can look at you because you're simply in her line of sight. The real signal isn't one isolated moment. It's the pattern. And once you understand that, 10 behaviors begin to look very different. The first is the one that confuses men the most. She becomes warm, then cold. One day the conversation feels effortless. She's engaged, she's laughing, she holds eye contact, she finds reasons to keep talking even after the original subject has disappeared. Then something changes. Her replies become shorter, her energy drops. She seems distant, and immediately the mind creates a story. She's lost interest. So the man reacts. He sends another message, then another. He starts explaining himself. He asks what happened. He tries harder to restore the warmth that disappeared. But here's the question he should have asked first. Did she actually lose interest, or did she become aware of how interested she was? Those are not the same thing. Sometimes attraction creates an internal conflict. One part of a person wants to move closer, another part wants to protect itself. The result can look like inconsistency. She leans in, realizes she's revealing too much, then steps back. She becomes comfortable, then suddenly remembers that comfort makes her vulnerable. She wants connection, but she also wants control over how much of herself is being exposed. That doesn't automatically mean she's playing a game. It may simply mean she's uncertain. And uncertainty is where emotionally dependent behavior becomes dangerous. Because the moment someone becomes distant, an insecure person feels compelled to close the distance. A grounded person doesn't. He doesn't punish the distance, but he doesn't beg it to disappear either. He continues behaving normally. If the warmth returns, he receives it naturally. If it doesn't, he doesn't collapse. That difference matters, because emotional stability isn't about pretending not to care. It's about caring without surrendering control of yourself. And there's another clue hidden inside the hot and cold pattern. When someone is genuinely uninterested, there is usually less investment over time. The conversations disappear, the effort disappears, the opportunities disappear. But when someone repeatedly moves toward you, pulls back, and then finds another reason to reconnect, the pattern becomes more interesting. Not proof, a pattern. So don't ask, what did that one message mean? Ask, what does her behavior consistently do? That's a much harder question, and a much more useful one, because attraction isn't always revealed by what someone says when they're comfortable. Sometimes it's revealed by what they do when they're trying very hard not to reveal anything. Which brings us to something even quieter, proximity. You may think attraction announces itself through flirting. Sometimes it does, but often it begins much earlier, through something almost embarrassingly ordinary. She keeps ending up near you. She stays a little longer after everyone else leaves. She joins a conversation you're already having. She remembers where you'll probably be. She walks past you when there are easier routes. She finds small, harmless reasons to enter your orbit. Any one of these means almost nothing, but repeated proximity can mean something. Think about your own behavior. You don't repeatedly spend time around people who hold absolutely no interest for you. You may be polite to them. You may enjoy their company, but you don't normally manufacture opportunities to be around them again and again without some reason. Human attention follows relevance, and emotional relevance often changes where we choose to place ourselves. The interesting part is that proximity gives someone plausible deniability. She doesn't have to say, "I came here because I wanted to see you." She can simply be there. Now you have a choice. Do you notice? Do you approach? Do you remain passive? That is why proximity can be more revealing than a dramatic compliment. A compliment requires courage. Showing up somewhere doesn't. It creates an opening without forcing a confession. But again, don't turn this into a fantasy machine. Repeated proximity means more when it appears alongside other signs. Does she remember things you said? Does she initiate conversation? Does she make time? Does her attention increase when you're around? Does she behave differently with you than with everyone else? That's where observation becomes more valuable than imagination. Because the goal isn't to convince yourself that she's attracted to you. The goal is to accurately understand what is happening. And sometimes the smallest details provide the clearest evidence. She notices things other people don't. You changed your watch. She noticed. You got a haircut. She noticed. You mentioned something weeks ago. She remembers. You casually told her about a place you like. Later, she brings it up. None of these things is a confession, but they reveal something important. Attention. Think about how selective your own attention is. Every day you encounter hundreds of details. Most disappear immediately. You don't remember what color shoes a stranger wore 3 days ago. You don't remember every sentence from every conversation. Your mind filters constantly. So when someone repeatedly remembers small details about you, it suggests that you occupied more mental space than an ordinary interaction would require. And this is where attraction can become surprisingly quiet. She doesn't have to tell you she's thinking about you. Her memory may tell you. Maybe you mentioned your favorite drink once. Weeks later, she remembers it. Maybe you made an offhand joke. She brings it back when you're talking. Maybe everyone else forgot something you said. She didn't. That doesn't prove romantic interest, but it does prove something. She was paying attention, and attention is expensive. It costs mental energy. The mistake men make is immediately exposing how excited they are to discover it. Wait, you remembered that? Now the moment becomes an interrogation. The better response is simpler. Notice it, appreciate it, keep the conversation moving. You don't need to turn every signal into a courtroom exhibit, because there is a strange psychological effect that happens when you don't desperately demand confirmation. You remain calm enough to observe, and once you're observing rather than chasing certainty, you begin noticing something else. Jealousy. Not because jealousy creates attraction, it doesn't. Jealousy can come from insecurity, possessiveness, competition, fear, or many other things. But when emotional investment already exists, jealousy can sometimes expose how much a person cares about their position in your world. She sees you talking to another woman. Suddenly, she becomes more attentive. She asks who that was. She makes a casual comment about how close you seemed. She jokes about women wanting your attention, then she quickly changes the subject. Why? Maybe she's simply curious. Maybe she's genuinely uncomfortable. Maybe she's interested. The only responsible answer is to look at the broader pattern, because jealousy by itself proves very little. But combined with repeated attention, proximity, nervousness, and emotional inconsistency, it becomes another piece of information. And this is where a man's behavior reveals more about him than hers reveals about her. The insecure man tries to manufacture jealousy. He wants to see whether she reacts. So he mentions another woman. He exaggerates attention. He watches her face. He waits for the reaction that will reassure his ego. But now he's no longer observing. He's manipulating. And even if it works temporarily, he's created a relationship built around emotional testing. A grounded man doesn't need that. If another woman talks to him, he talks to her. If someone becomes jealous, he doesn't punish them with it. He doesn't exploit the emotion. He remains himself. That is a much deeper form of confidence, because confidence isn't the ability to control someone else's emotions. It's the ability to remain in control of your own. And that brings us to another behavior that looks like indifference from the outside. She plays it safe. She seems interested. She enjoys talking to you. She smiles when she sees you. But whenever the interaction gets close to becoming unmistakably personal, she pulls it back. You move toward clarity. She returns to ambiguity. You ask something personal. She answers but doesn't reveal much. The conversation becomes intimate. Then suddenly she changes the subject. It can be frustrating, because you want certainty. But certainty can feel dangerous when rejection is possible. Ambiguity creates an escape route. If she takes a risk and you reject her, she has to face the rejection. But if she keeps everything slightly unclear, she can protect her pride. She can tell herself, maybe it didn't mean anything. That is emotional self-protection. And this is where many men make a serious mistake. They try to force certainty, more messages, more questions, more pressure. Do you like me? What's going on between us? Why are you acting differently? Sometimes direct communication is exactly what is needed. But pressure and communication are not the same thing. Pressure tries to eliminate uncertainty immediately. Communication allows two people to discover what they actually want. If she is interested but cautious, pressure can make the situation feel unsafe. If she isn't interested, pressure won't create genuine attraction. Either way, forcing the answer rarely helps. A more grounded approach is to remain clear about your own intentions while respecting her freedom to respond. That's where stoicism becomes relevant. Strength isn't forcing an outcome. Strength is being able to accept an outcome you cannot control. You can express interest. You can invite someone out. You can create an opportunity. But you cannot command another person's feelings. And once you understand that, rejection becomes less frightening. Because rejection doesn't destroy your identity. It simply gives you information. Now consider a different scenario. You're sitting together. The conversation slows down. She becomes quieter. She fidgets. She laughs at something that wasn't particularly funny. Your eyes meet. She looks away, then looks back. She seems slightly nervous, but she doesn't leave. That final detail matters, because attraction doesn't always look confident. Sometimes it looks awkward. Sometimes people stumble over words around someone they genuinely care about. They overthink simple questions. They become unusually aware of their hands, their posture, their voice. They say something and immediately wonder whether they should have said it. But again, nervousness alone isn't evidence of attraction. Someone may be nervous because they're shy, or uncomfortable, or anxious. So look at what happens alongside the nervousness. Does she continue the conversation? Does she keep choosing to be there? Does she return after awkward moments? Does she seem nervous specifically around you? Does she become more relaxed after spending time with you? That pattern tells you much more, and here's where calmness becomes powerful. When silence appears, most people rush to destroy it. They talk faster. They tell unnecessary stories. They make jokes. They seek reassurance. But not every silence needs to be rescued. Sometimes two people simply need a moment to become comfortable with each other. A man who can sit inside a quiet moment without panicking communicates something valuable. I don't need to perform. And that can make another person feel less pressure to perform too. Real confidence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the absence of desperation. Now there's another source of information that men often ignore: her friends. A person can control what she tells you. It's much harder to control everything her friends know. Maybe one of them suddenly says, "We've heard a lot about you." Maybe they tease her when you walk over. Maybe they exchange looks. Maybe someone makes an inside joke that clearly has a history behind it. These moments can be revealing. But again, don't treat them as proof. Friends tease each other constantly. They may be joking. They may be trying to embarrass her. They may simply enjoy watching two people interact. The real question is whether there is a consistent pattern behind it. Has she talked about you before? Do her friends seem unusually aware of you? Do they create opportunities for you to interact? Does she become nervous when they mention you? And perhaps most importantly, how does she react? Sometimes the reaction tells you more than the joke. She may laugh. She may deny everything. She may become unusually quiet. She may try to shut the conversation down. But don't become intoxicated by the information. Knowing someone might like you doesn't make you more valuable. And believing you have leverage over another person's emotions is one of the fastest ways to become arrogant. Information is useful only when you can carry it without becoming controlled by it. Which brings us to one of the most fascinating signs of all. Mirroring. You sit back. A few minutes later, she adopts a similar posture. You slow your speech. Her pace gradually slows too. You take a sip. She takes one shortly afterward. You use a particular expression. Eventually, she starts using it too. This can happen naturally when people feel connected. Humans unconsciously synchronize. Our posture, rhythm, facial expressions, and speech patterns can become more similar when we feel comfortable with someone. But don't turn this into a body language fortune-telling system. Mirroring is not proof of attraction. People mirror co-workers. Friends mirror friends. People unconsciously imitate people they respect or simply spend a lot of time around. The important question is whether the synchronization appears as part of a larger pattern of connection. And there is a deeper lesson here. You don't create genuine connection by constantly performing. You create it by being present. The man who is desperately trying to impress someone is constantly adjusting himself. He changes his voice. He changes his opinions. He exaggerates his confidence. He watches for approval. The grounded person doesn't need to become someone else every 30 seconds. He remains recognizable. And when two people feel comfortable around each other, synchronization can happen naturally. That's far more interesting than trying to manufacture it. So if you notice mirroring, don't test it. Don't deliberately move your hand to see whether she copies you. Don't change your posture 5 times to gather evidence. Just observe. Because the moment you start performing for the signal, you destroy the very authenticity that made the interaction meaningful. And then there is the most obvious place hidden attraction can escape: the eyes. Someone can control their words. They can choose their tone. They can pretend to be indifferent. But attention is harder to control. You enter a room, she looks at you, she looks away. Later you catch her looking again. You're talking to someone else. Her eyes briefly move toward you, you laugh, she looks over. You're leaving. She gives you one last glance. Any one of those moments could mean nothing, but repeated attention can become significant when it fits the rest of the pattern. Because people naturally monitor what matters to them. If you mean nothing to someone, there is usually little reason for their attention to repeatedly return to you. But when attraction, curiosity, anxiety, or emotional investment is present, attention often follows. And that's why the eyes can feel like a battlefield. One part of the person wants to look. Another part remembers they shouldn't. So the eyes move toward you, then retreat. Look again, then disappear. It's subtle, almost invisible. But sometimes the contradiction itself is the signal. And the wrong response is to stare harder. Don't turn eye contact into a contest. Don't try to trap someone into revealing themselves. Notice it. Let it happen. Then continue living your life. Because if someone is interested, you don't need to force them to prove it every 30 seconds. And if they aren't, no amount of staring will change that. Which leads to the final and perhaps most misunderstood behavior. She suddenly acts as though she doesn't want you. Everything seemed to be going well. The conversation was easy. There was chemistry. She seemed engaged. Then suddenly distance. Messages slow down. Replies become shorter. The warmth disappears. And now the temptation is overwhelming. You want an explanation. You want reassurance. You want to know what changed, so you chase, but stop. Before you react, ask yourself one question. What if the correct response to uncertainty isn't more emotion, but more observation? Sometimes distance means exactly what it appears to mean. She's no longer interested. And you need to respect that. Sometimes people pull back because they're overwhelmed. Sometimes because they're unsure. Sometimes because they want reassurance. Sometimes because they're testing boundaries. Sometimes because life has nothing to do with romance at all. You cannot know which explanation is true simply by looking at a text message. That's why emotional discipline matters. You don't punish her for becoming distant. You don't manipulate her into becoming jealous. You don't flood her phone, you don't abandon your entire life waiting for a response. You simply continue being yourself. If she returns and shows genuine interest, you can decide whether you want to engage. If she doesn't, you have your answer. That is freedom, and this is where the entire lesson changes. At the beginning, it may sound like we're learning how to decode women, but that's not the deepest lesson. The deeper lesson is learning how to observe human behavior without becoming a slave to it. Because there's a dangerous obsession hidden inside the search for signs. A man can become so focused on figuring out whether someone likes him that he forgets to ask a much more important question. Do I even want this person in my life? Think about that. If your entire emotional state depends on whether she replies quickly, if your confidence rises when she looks at you, if your mood collapses when she becomes distant, then you are not reading her behavior. Her behavior is reading you. She has become the remote control for your emotions, and that's the opposite of what Stoic discipline teaches. The point isn't to become emotionally cold, it's to become emotionally sovereign. You can be attracted to someone without worshipping their attention. You can hope someone chooses you without needing them to. You can notice attraction without becoming obsessed with proving it. You can accept uncertainty without filling every silence with anxiety. And you can walk away from someone you desire without believing that walking away means you lost. That's the real power. Not making someone chase you, not creating jealousy, not manipulating emotions, not pretending you don't care. The power is being able to care and still remain yourself, because once you understand that, every sign looks different. Her nervousness is information, not a command. Her eye contact is information, not a promise. Her proximity is information, not permission to invade her space. Her jealousy is information, not an opportunity to manipulate her. Her friend's teasing is information, not proof. Her distance is information, not an invitation to chase. And her attraction, if it exists, is ultimately hers to reveal. You don't need to drag it into the light. You simply create enough space for the truth to reveal itself. That's why the strongest man in the room is not necessarily the man who gets the most attention. It may be the man who doesn't need attention to know who he is. He can notice a glance without becoming obsessed with it. He can receive warmth without becoming dependent on it. He can experience rejection without becoming bitter. He can feel desire without allowing desire to make his decisions. And he can recognize interest without turning another person's emotions into a game. Because attraction isn't a puzzle you solve once. People change, context changes, feelings change. What matters is whether the behavior consistently moves toward connection or consistently moves away from it. So stop searching for one magical sign. Watch the pattern. Does she repeatedly invest attention? Does she create opportunities for connection? Does she remember details? Does she seek proximity? Does she continue engaging even when she feels nervous? Does her behavior toward you consistently differ from how she treats everyone else? And most importantly, does she freely move toward you? That final question matters more than all the others, because hidden attraction is interesting, but mutual attraction is better. You shouldn't need to become a detective forever. Eventually, healthy interest becomes clearer. Someone makes time. Someone communicates. Someone chooses to be there. And when the opportunity comes, you don't need manipulation. You need courage. You make your interest clear. You give the other person room to respond. Then you accept the answer. That is where observation becomes action, and action becomes self-respect. The real lesson was never that women are mysterious creatures whose secrets men must decode. The real lesson is much more uncomfortable. Human beings rarely reveal exactly what they feel in the moment they feel it. We protect our pride. We hide uncertainty. We test the waters. We look for safety. We send signals. We withdraw. We return. We watch. We wait. And sometimes two people can spend months standing on opposite sides of the same invisible door because neither wants to be the first to risk rejection. But there is another danger. You can become so determined to find hidden meaning that you start seeing attraction everywhere. That's not observation. That's projection. The disciplined observer is willing to accept both possibilities. She might be interested, and she might not. He doesn't need to decide before the evidence is there. That patience is rare, and it protects you from two opposite mistakes. Chasing someone who isn't choosing you, and walking away from someone who was quietly trying to connect. So the next time a woman seems unusually warm, then suddenly distant, don't panic. The next time she remembers a tiny detail, don't immediately build a fantasy around it. The next time her eyes find you across a crowded room, don't turn it into proof. Observe, stay present, look for patterns, respect boundaries, and eventually let reality answer the question that speculation never can. Because the most attractive form of confidence isn't believing that everyone wants you. It's being secure enough to discover that not everyone will, and knowing that you're still completely fine. That's the part most men miss. They think power means making someone desire them. It doesn't. Power is being able to desire someone without losing yourself. It is having enough discipline to notice the signal without becoming addicted to the signal. Enough confidence to make your intentions clear. Enough respect to accept another person's choice. And enough self-respect to never chase someone who repeatedly chooses distance. So perhaps the hidden signs were never really the destination. They were the test. The real test was whether you could observe another person's behavior without surrendering control of your own mind. Because once you can do that, you no longer need every glance explained. You no longer need every silence interpreted. You no longer need every message to reassure you. You become calm enough to let people reveal themselves, and when someone genuinely wants to be part of your life, you won't have to spend forever decoding them. Eventually, they will choose to come closer. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson of all. The goal isn't to become so skilled at reading hidden attraction that you can make anyone want you. The goal is to become so grounded that you no longer need to force, chase, manipulate, or guess. You observe, you communicate, you act with courage, and then you let the other person choose. Because real power isn't making someone afraid to lose you. It's becoming the kind of person who can hear either stay or go without losing himself.